Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly ag weather update brought to you by Farm Credit. I want to begin first with a quick recap of the weather patterns we've been in so that you can see where this is going to be changing in the near term. So our first map looks at the time period of late July through this weekend, and we're looking at mid-level winds in the atmosphere. So this is kind of like the steering currents of the atmosphere. Now, if you take a look, one of the big features has been this large ridge that's been over Texas. But what that ridge over Texas has done is it's caused the jet stream level winds to kind of be oriented at times just like this. So they're all coming out of this direction. Now, this has pushed a lot of moisture through the midsection of the country, major flooding. But what it does is it hits the Appalachian Mountains and the Blue Ridge Mountains perpendicularly. And it's quite rare. Well, let me rephrase that. It's not common to see the flow be so persistent for so long and give us a rain shadow effect on the Appalachian Mountains. But it's done that. And you can see it another way by looking here at the precipitable water. So this would tell me where the juice is in the atmosphere. So very dry in the ridge, but the warmer colors here represent more moisture. So see how it's come over like this? But do you notice that there's a break right in through here, and it extends up into just off the coast? This would be the effect of the moisture running out as it runs over the ridge and then really getting wrung out by the Appalachian Mountains. And why I'm so concerned about it is we keep continue to see the effects of this happening in parts of North Carolina specifically. And I'm focusing it right on this area because, again, this past weekend, where do we see bigger storms? They kind of cascade a little bit farther to the south. So they hit parts of Georgia. They hit parts of South Carolina. Where was it extremely wet? Well, on this side of the ridge, coming through the Midwest, coming through parts of the Mid-South. And if we keep kind of looking at the effects of this, that's where we've also had a lot of our severe weather. And that doesn't mean we haven't had nasty storms over here, but we continue to get beat into the midsection of the country with a lot of hail. We are way above average on hail reports, severe wind reports, and tornado reports here in 2023. But take a look at this. This is the last 7 days of total accumulated precipitation, and we're looking at it in terms of inches. But I want to do something here. I'm going to take off the tail end of this, and I want to show you, I have another product. There it is, masked. Now this map only shows you precip that was greater than a ½ inch over the same time period. And you just notice this area in through here that has continued to miss out on decent rains. And it's showing up in the longer forecast as well. So for the last 2 weeks, again, less than half of normal rainfall in this pocket. We've had a few other drier patches, but most of the rest of Ag South's territory has avoided drought. Now, I've made a case in the last several videos that we don't have the full symptomatic behavior of a drought developing, a pattern setting up. And that would just be where there'd be a large subtropical ridge that just sits over this area. It's been over Texas and it's going to move over the Midwest. It's not here. But that doesn't mean we can't develop these regional drought problems. So there have been storms that have tried to roll through this area, but I'm just trying to identify these pockets that could be showing some late season stresses. Now I'm going to give it to you one last way here, just thinking about this area. Let's look at some statistical, kind of ranking numbers in a second. But I want to point out how dry it's been in this part of the Cotton Belt. Very wet in this section, but very dry here. Take a look at the Midwest. Huge rains into Illinois, Missouri, breaking drought, parts of Nebraska, the Dakotas. While the upper Midwest has been very dry, except for this morning where it's finally raining in this region as well. The West has been very dry too. We can now look at those stats and kind of get a picture of this. So this is month to date starting on August 1st. And again, we do have these 3 climate reporting districts in North Carolina showing up in the top 30 driest such starts to August on record. And the data go back 193 years. So this is quite important to watch develop. Now, do you see the flow? Here's the ridge in Texas. See how hot and dry it is there? Comes right over the top, gets right to the Appalachian Mountains, hits, and then as you go farther east, we've missed out on that rainfall. So I thought it would just be good to kind of see that. And another way to look at it is this. We finally got, this happened last week, our soil moisture data from NASA back and up and running. And so this is the data I've got through the 14th, and it's through early in the morning here. But you notice we do have 0 to 40 centimeter, that's 0 to 16-inch soil moisture that when you look historically is ranking in the bottom side of the distribution. That's what the percentile means. That doesn't mean there's only 2% of moisture in there. It just says in the data set that's used to make this map, it's on the lowest side of the distribution. So it is raining here. And we have some rain that might be getting into Texas next week, late next week. But we're going to have to wait to see how the moisture gets into this area and what the storms look like. But what's interesting about flash drought scenarios, and you can see pockets of dryness in through here, is that they're not picked up on the drought monitor. So our newest drought monitor, which came out on August 10th last week, we just have a couple of areas that are showing up in abnormally dry. But I'm curious just how, tough it has been late season on this crop in these parts that show up in these darker reds. So just wanted to stress that. Now, is this pattern changing? Well, not quite yet, but here's the main piece that will be shifting. It's right here. Now, that's over the Aleutian Islands. But for the last better than 3 weeks, the flow has come around that trough, come into British Columbia, and dropped troughs of low pressure like the one you see right here just into the midsection of the country. So we've seen a lot of, whoops, sorry about that. I thought I had my drawer up there. We've seen a lot of that. And that flow has hit the Appalachian Mountains and created that rain shadow effect. Now, there's been some important things that have changed during this time period. We actually have our Bermuda high coming back, and I'm going to finish up today talking about that and where that's going to possibly get this hurricane season going. But in the meantime, we have another trough coming over. It's going to move its way toward the Appalachian Mountains, toward New England, and we want to know if we're going to get some storms out of it. Because early this morning, as the sun was rising in the midsection of the country, that's the storm system we're going to watch this week, okay? Yesterday, if I just take you back, this is what we got out of it. Just as the sun was setting, we were mostly clear here, but this was a pretty potent system rolling through the midsection of the country. And by the way, on the backside of it, a lot of heat in the northwest. But as I said, all of this is shifting around very quickly. And the northwest, which is going to stay hot this week, is going to start to build in much cooler conditions. The Midwest is about to get scorched, but not this week. It's going to be this weekend and next week. And we're going to see what that does over here to Ag South's territory. Okay, first of all, as that system rolls through, we do have the risk today on the 14th of getting some strong to severe storms in this area. All right, I'll show you that in a second, but take a look at this. Going into Tuesday, we need to get these rains in this area. I don't want the severe winds or the hail or the potential for any of these storms to rotate, but I need the rain out of this. Because as we go past that time frame, we're going to watch one more system skirt through the northern plains of the United States, and then we're going to shut it down here. Okay, so let me show you what I'm looking at here. High-res NAM just came out this morning. There we go. This is 7 a.m., and we're going to watch as we play this forward through Monday. So isolated storms tonight. Bigger system sitting here. Isolated storms tonight. As we play into the overnight hours, there's the main front trying to hit the Appalachian Mountains early tomorrow morning. And then it's going to clear the mountains by mid-afternoon and evening. Now, if you notice, the models are projecting a very narrow and skinny band of possibly stronger storms. This is going to be on Tuesday afternoon and evening. But we need these things, honestly, to slow down, give us better rainfall, excuse me, and to kind of make up some of these long-standing deficits. Because that rolls through, and by Wednesday morning, we've got things set up to where it's going to really begin to shift around in the midsection of the country. Notice the models are still keeping a weak disturbance just offshore here on Wednesday, but overall, through your middle of the week, I think the NAM model has this captured pretty well. So, how much are we expecting? Well, this is the latest update from the WPC. This is a product generated by our National Weather Service. And as they bring that line of storms through, plus the scattered storms in front of it, okay, we do have a decent chance of grabbing a lot of places in here better than a half inch of rainfall. Now, we need this to verify along the coast. These are some of our driest climate reporting districts in North Carolina. All right, we need to see that happen. But after this goes through, do you see this wetter strip that goes right in through here like this? What's going to happen is this. A big area of high pressure is going to build in here, while the Bermuda high sits right over here. Now, this will be the tricky part of this forecast. At present, that boundary where they meet is going to sit offshore. If, and I'm just saying if anything can move this, we're going to start to increase the chances of rainfall. But if it moves the other direction, we then get much, much, much drier in this pattern. So take a look at this. This is your next 7 days of total accumulated precipitation. Still hot and dry in Texas. It's even going to get hotter. We see better rains coming through the Midwest. This is the last hole to fill in this area in the Midwest for all the precipitation. And take a look at what the monsoon is expected to start doing soon. So I want to take you next to the high-res European model and show you all of these features again. So early this morning, here's the low moving through the Midwest. Now we're going to watch this one drag its front tomorrow. This is tomorrow morning, afternoon, and evening. There it is. That's when the frontal boundary clears the mountains and increases our chances of storms. Now, as I play beyond this, we're going to watch another system come through the Canadian prairie, but you're going to see flashes of green right in this area on Wednesday and getting out there into Thursday as well. And the reason for this is the current setup, leaving the Bermuda high in place here, is going to try to keep the better chances for storms closer to our shore. So this is going into Friday and then into Saturday. Now, what is yet to be fully seen is, do we get enough push around this to start to just increase those daily storm chances that don't show up in the models, but we know climatologically can happen? So we're going to watch for that very carefully. Because other than that, the ridge building in the midsection of the country, we don't have a whole lot of chances for getting some moisture into this area. Now, what happens early next week will be important to see. Because you notice coming here next Monday off of Florida over towards Texas, there's this system that might come through here and deliver some rain to one of the dry spots in the country. But the Midwest opens to a huge ridge. It's very hot and dry, so we need to take a look at what this is going to do to precipitation chances. Now, to show you that ridge, here it is. Watch right here first, okay? This is the culprit to setting up the whole pattern. So Monday into Tuesday and Wednesday this week, there's that trough that goes through that gives you a chance for storms. But notice, by Wednesday and Thursday, it's gone. So these are the last couple of waves coming through here. See them? Still coming from that direction. And they're out. Now they're done. This is by next Sunday. Massive ridge opens in the midsection of the United States. So our flow will come over this, just like that. Now again, the question is, can the Bermuda High help and increase the chances of storms? That's what we need to see. See how you're kind of caught in between these two big high pressure cells? Because as we play out there into early next week, that's a large ridge that opens up in the mid part of the country. Now, why I'm not calling for just full-blown scary drought is that the ridge axis is here. If it were over here, then we'd be in big trouble. So we don't quite have that, what could be detrimental ridge pattern setting up, but we need to get these rains in place before this begins to start to build. So what are our chances in the next 10 days of grabbing an inch? Notice how much closer to the coast you get, your probabilities get higher. Outside of that, we're pretty dry. What's coming through the Midwest? This is all now, today, and then it's gone. So the Midwest goes very hot and dry. The Southwest monsoon cranks up. Canadian Prairie gets some rain. And our best chances are along that boundary that's going to sit right in through here between the large high in the Midwest and the Bermuda high that's offshore. So what does it do to the week 2 pattern? Well, notice that the models are now really showing a much stronger signal for dryness in here. All right? But notice, right along the coast, what are our chances of near normal? All depend on the placement of the ridges. So that's your next 2 weeks in terms of precip. The temperature side of things are going to be changing. Since the beginning of August, most of Ag South territory has actually seen cooler weather. When you put it all together, the first 13 days of the month have had cooler conditions. Now, down in southern Georgia, that's not the case. Down into Florida, of course, it's not. And look at over here in parts of Texas. All these ones, I mean, it's the hottest start to any August that we have on record going back to 1893. But if that ridge opens into this area, we're going to start to see some shifts in this pattern. We already today, in fact, let's get an update on this. There we go. We already today have the excessive heat advisories right into this area and excessive heat warnings farther to the south. You can also see up here in the Pacific Northwest we've got them, but these have an expiration date on them. These are going to expand. This is what the temperatures are going to do. Here's today's highs. We're well into the 90s. That's about 5 to 10 degrees warmer than normal. Tuesday, the front tries to push. Remember, this is the one that's going to give us our best chance at some storms. That clears, giving us a cooler Wednesday. But watch the evolution of this temperature pattern into Thursday, which is still cooler, Friday, near normal, then getting into the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. So we start off hot, cool back down, go right back hot into next weekend. And now, look at how cool it is in the west compared to normal as the ridge opens here. So our problem is this. There's your next 5 days, but we know it's going to be trying to cool off a little bit. That's day 5 through 10. The heat is back on. And then it looks as though the heat's going to try to stick around for a while for us as we finish out this month of August. Now, as we press toward the end of August, there are always other factors that are not well predicted beyond the next 5 to 7 days. But it does appear that after the cool stretch you've got right now, coming up, not today, but coming up later this week, we break back over toward above average temperatures for a while. Now, the wild card factors are always in the tropics, and certainly we watched Hurricane Dora move all the way across the international date line before the weekend started, and it continues to go out here. It's now being forecast by the Japanese because it's past the international date line. It's called Typhoon Door, at least it was. It's now weakened a bit. But in the Atlantic, we've got a couple of areas to be watching. We have two particular spots that just came off of Africa. They're chewing on a little bit of dust north from the Sahara, but 20% chance of both of them getting going. Now, what will be important about this is to see the placement of the Bermuda High. So therefore, over the next 10 days, when you look at the chances of getting a tropical depression going, it's not off our coast, okay? It's going to be here off the African coast. That's where this hurricane season is likely going to get its best kind of running start. But I do want to point out that there is that chance for some tropical showers and storms to move their way into Texas, hitting the really dry regions here. And we compete a lot with the crops that are grown in Texas. So we'll just keep an eye on this because they desperately need this rainfall. All right. Now, I'm going to come back to the tropics again as I try to wrap this one up. But first, I want to show you the newest update from the CPC. And I've got big questions about this. This is their newest update looking at August 26th through September the 8th. Now, remember, this is the time of year where really doing an excellent job on predicting precipitation is hard because of any, would-be tropical system that could fire up in the pattern. So we look at this and we say, all right, better chances of being above normal. Why would that be the case? Well, according to the CPC, they are taking this big ridge that moves into the Midwest and just shoving it back to the Southwest again. And there's some evidence that that could happen. I mean, it's been happening. Persistence has made that happen for a while. But I'm not so sure that it's going to be able to happen by the time we finish August or maybe even start September. I think the ridge that's opening here might stay open for a while. In summer, it's sometimes hard to break away from patterns as they evolve. If you'd like to know where to watch to see that breakdown, don't watch the U.S., watch the Aleutian Islands. That's where the pattern can start to make its shift first to bring this back into fruition. Now, I'm going to compare this to what the European model's saying. Now, this goes out a little longer. This goes from August 25th to September 25th. And they've got us drier. But again, we cannot trust a long-range forecast during hurricane season. So just understand that the risk is there for a little bit drier conditions, but one tropical pulse, and this is done. This won't verify. They do also have it a bit warmer than normal over that 30-day time period. So unlike the Climate Prediction Center, which wants to cool this whole area off, they've got the European model keeps it on the warmer side of things. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't think we could make any sort of a clean judgment on where this pattern's going to go to finish August and start September. And I think the real problem here is to know if this ridge by August 23rd still lives in this area. Or do we end up getting a trough coming back in here, which means there'll be a trough in there and the flow will go around, up and over, and then dive. That's where it's been. So there are questions as to whether or not I could return to that area. But what I do know is that we've got a few things brewing right now we have to keep an eye on. The Atlantic, still very warm. El Nino building, taking more of a role. North Pacific, very hot. Negative Pacific Meridianal mode, fading. All of these factors are kind of shaping up what we think this upcoming, month and a half. In fact, let's just stretch it out. The next 4 months are going to look like, to be honest with you. So I think we should have a quick discussion about that. So I want to show you this first. I told you earlier, as we think about this hurricane season, the Bermuda High is the most important. So it sits between Bermuda and the Azores, right? Now I'm looking for any signal in the models as we play this out. This is the 30-day sliding window all the way through the peak month of September. And it just seems to be hanging out here and doesn't seem to be too far displaced. So what does that mean? That puts the East Coast into play. That means we could get tropical systems that are making this kind of move, coming around that Bermuda High. So that's why I am unsettled on our pattern in the month of September. I just think we have to pay attention to tropical systems. Even though none are there right now, this is going to be the major influence around what we're going to be seeing. Now, another thing to think about, El Nino is actually really beginning to show its dominance. The Southern Oscillation Index, which we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, it's down to -13. Remember, it's got to be below -7 for us to consider the atmosphere to be an El Nino-like behavior. The MJO's in the Pacific Ocean. We're getting stronger westerly wind bursts. And all that says is that we're starting to see the atmosphere exhibit El Nino-like behaviors. We've already watched the ocean temperatures come up. But now we're getting to see that this fall into winter will likely be dominated by El Nino. So we start to ask, well, what does that mean? So because I can't give you a solid forecast with the models right now, I want to tell you what history would tell us. So I'm going to look back here And every year that we had an El Nino developing, a new one developing. And here they are all listed. What happens in September and October? When you stitch them all together, what you end up getting is this, all right? That's the map. Now you notice that a couple of our climate reporting districts were a bit drier, but most of Ag South territory really didn't see fall drought development. It wasn't there. And then if we say, well, what about the Mid-South, Midwest? We were wet. This was a wet harvest in these particular years. So then let's flip this over and say, what might the temperatures do? So same idea, composite years. This is the temperature pattern. We were warmer in the south, so we don't really see a major cool down in Ag South's territory going into fall. All right. Now from here, I want to do this out a little farther. Let's just go out and let's go much farther. Let's go straight into winter, December through February. If we look at the temperatures, take a look at this. This is El Nino to the T. The risk of a cooler winter is in place. Now, it doesn't mean brutally cold, just cooler than normal. El Ninos tend to make the northern tier of the United States warmer than average and the southern tier cooler than average. And that's always a local average. That's not compared to the whole country. All right. And the other side of this, which is really quite intriguing, is going back to the precipitation and looking at what the odds are of us having a very wet winter. Now, when I see this, this is El Nino to the T. We are strong subtropical jet here, strong subtropical jet coming to California, dry in these areas. What this could mean, though, is we get a lot of what we call Miller A systems. They come out of this part of the South of the Gulf and they hit the East Coast and run. And we didn't see any of this last winter. So I'm just giving you a preliminary thought here, something we get to watch over the next several months. And it's just good to kind of take that quick jab out there and see what we can see. So I'm going to leave this one here and tell you to have a great week, and I'll talk to you next Monday. Thanks.